I would like to talk about Nikola Jokic, because
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, anytime you get into any sort of modern ball, it's kind of the name that comes up, right? He's kind of just the most dominant figure, like relative to competition, since maybe even a Kareem, just the way that maybe he doesn't have, like, he's not a part of the same sort of dynasty as we saw with Magic and Bird and even like Jordan and then Duncan and Curry to some extent. It's just he's dominating his competition so much, and he's on his way potentially this year to a fourth MVP. He's just by far the biggest, at least offensive statistical enigma that we've
Yeah.
seen. I mean, when it comes to a big man that can do absolutely everything. I mean, we talk so much about his passing, right? Because, you know, we had our Wilts and our Waltons kind of like the 60s, 70s, but it took a while after those. We kind of just had those arguments, but a lot of people were like, well, it's probably Walton, but then Wilt was averaging 8 assists, whatnot, led the league in assists.
Sure. Maybe Sabonis if you want to include his international
Right.
play kind of thing. Yeah.
But yeah, the moment Jokic kind of hopped into the league, we're like, okay, this guy like has the potential. Like if he reaches what we think he can become,
For sure.
he could be the greatest passing big man of all time. And I mean, not only is that not a conversation anymore, right?
It's not.
Not even close to a conversation. He's one of the greatest, in my opinion, passers, period, of all time.
Yeah.
So just that from the big man position, I mean, just, you know, his height and ability to see down the floor is just unprecedented. And we give him so much credit for that. But the rebounding is amazing, especially for the era. His touch around the basket is some of the best, if not the best, down low that we've ever seen. And that's the thing with Jokic is just the ways that he's dominating for his position, and that he's on his way to potentially a fourth MVP in this era, especially when it's harder to win MVPs, when it's especially harder to win championships.
Yeah.
It kind of brings up some conversations like, just what does he have to do, especially in an era where we're seeing OKC, you know, they might win 70 plus games this year. They might, you know, have the first pick for all we know. If the Mavericks got the first pick last year, who knows about OKC this year? It's like, it's harder than ever for a star of Jokic's caliber to succeed like he is, but he's doing it anyway. So
sure. Yeah, I saw something on social media. It was like yesterday or day before yesterday, that if the season was to end today with the standings where they're at, OKC would have 3 lottery picks. I mean, just imagine that. They might win 70 plus games. They're a definitely strong chance they end up being back-to-back champions, and 3 lottery picks on top of it. It's like not even fair. But no, Jokic is incredible. Do you think he should have won like 6 straight MVPs if he gets the MVPs this year? Should he have ran straight with it, or were a couple of those guys actually the more deserving one?
You know what? It's hard to say. I mean, I tend to say that he deserved it over Embiid, but I understood the argument there, just the way that he was scoring. I mean, that Embiid was scoring. I mean, if you look, I think Embiid's one of the leaders all time, if you look on Basketball Reference, for like points per possession. So just like his efficiency just scoring the basketball was insane during his prime. And granted, it didn't necessarily translate to the postseason, but it's a regular season award. So I understood it. I still would have leaned Jokic, but that's just me. I might be a little biased. But last year, I think, is the more compelling conversation, because the whole race between Shea and Jokic, I couldn't help but think about the early 60s, especially 1962.
Sure.
Bill Russell versus Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain's getting all the stats. He's averaging, 50 points a game, 25 rebounds a game. But the players at that point, because the players were voting for MVP, gave it to Bill Russell because they realized that the best team in the league, the best engine for success in the league, was pivoted by Bill Russell. Right. And at some point, you almost have to ask yourself, what's the point of basketball, right? Is it to put up the best stats, or to some extent, is there some level of sacrifice that has to be made for the betterment of your team? And I think that I was probably 50-50 on that MVP, to be honest. It was so close, dude, because like SGA I mean, I could be wrong, but wasn't he was the first to lead the league in scoring,
Yep.
win MVP, and win Finals MVP in the same season since MJ, correct?
Yeah, I think you could count, like, I think there was only three guys who had done that, which was MJ, Shaq, and
Mm,
SGA, which is ridiculous
okay.
because Shaq did it in 2000 as well. And so, yeah, leading the league in scoring, MVP, Finals MVP, and so incredible season. On top of that, it's been pretty consistent throughout, the vast history of MVP voting that if you win so much, they reward you for it. And I mean, the only really other example where a team won in the high 60s, and like, there's very few examples, but like one of them was Michael Jordan, losing out to Karl Malone in 1997. People still never stop talking about that one. And so, to a certain extent, like, yeah, it almost felt like they kind of had to do it to SGA. So I agree. I think that one was definitely more competitive. I definitely would have given it to Jokic over Embiid. But this year, you're going to run into that all over again with the way things are going. Because if they win 70 plus games, but Jokic is having the most ridiculous statistical season we've ever seen, well, here we go. It's even improved upon last season in that sense. And so I think it's cool that you bring up Wilt Chamberlain because, it's fun for me and you guys who really know a lot of NBA history. Same thing with a lot of people who follow this channel. But I think a lot of young fans are missing those parallels, which is kind of a bummer. But, right now it feels like OKC is turning out to be Jokic's Celtics, and with the stats he's putting up, with the ways he's just breaking records. What gets me about the Joker is he does things, puts up numbers, and breaks certain records. I'm like, he's not supposed to be doing this. Throughout the first half of last season, he was shooting like 50% from 3-point range. And it's not like he wasn't taking that many. He was shooting like 4 or 5 a game, so that's still a decent amount. It's not league leader status in today's NBA, but it's still quite a bit. And then, like, I'd have to check, but up until recently, he was shooting 78% on 2-point shots. Okay, so just like from all of his 2-point shots, like that is Wilt Chamberlain like type efficiency, and Wilt only got there very few times in his career. So Jokic is ridiculous, and again, it's not like he's. I remember there were certain years where DeAndre Jordan was leading the league in like field goal percentage because he's just catching lob passes from Chris Paul. That's like all he's doing. That's not Jokic. I mean, jump shots, fadeaways, 3-point shots, like he's doing everything. And so, yeah, I did you answer where you have him on your all-time list? Did you say already, or how are you saving that?
Dude, I mean, it's just so hard because I could honestly listen to an argument. I'm still trying to decide, but I could listen to an argument from him anywhere from 30 to 5. Honestly.
Sure.
Like that, I'm not saying that I would have him as high as 5, but like I would listen to that argument depending on your criteria, right?
Sure.
I mean, granted, if you're gonna have Jokic at 5, you better have Wilt in your top 5 as well. Like if you're gonna go by
Sure.
that criteria, but I mean, it just depends on how you want to argue it. Like, how much does team success matter to that argument? How much? Because that's the one thing. I mean, if we talk about baseball or football, like one player relative to the whole team in that aspect, like there's way more
Right.
players either on the field or whatnot in a baseball or a football than just one player. Like that ratio from with basketball, it's 1 to 5, right? I mean,
Right.
there's bench players as well, but there's 5 players on the court at once, and your impact in basketball as an individual player has so much more impact in a sport like basketball. So
Right.
it kind of opens up the argument, unlike any other sport, of how much can one player impact the final score of a game, like the final
Yeah.
outcome of a game.
I think
And
the only
it
thing it's really
really,
comparable to is like a quarterback in the NFL, maybe. That's what it feels like. Is like that level of impact on the game itself. But sorry, not to interrupt. Go ahead.
well, but even then, it's like you're a quarterback, you got to throw it to a receiver. Receiver's got to catch it.
Sure.
Let's say you're a Michael Jordan, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, you're just scoring so many points a game.
I think
That
so.
basket is stagnant. Yeah,
Yeah.
that basket's
Yeah.
stagnant. I mean, you think about Michael Jordan's game-winning shot in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
We won't talk about the push off, if you want to call it a push off or not. We won't even get into that conversation.
Sure.
But it's at the end of the day, it's him, the defender, and the basket. That's
Mm-hmm.
it.
It's
So and that just the same as that alongside being one player amongst five on the court at once on your team. It's just like the talk of like, how much impact do you have? And that's kind of the talk with Jokic, right? Is like, could he be doing more? Is there any argument for him to be doing more? He won not even went 7 games. He went to 7 games against Shea's Thunder in the playoffs, right?
After they just fired their coach right before the playoffs started, which was crazy. I mean, there was drama with the Westbrook matchup, like pairing with him and everything. I mean, that was not a season where they were supposed to do well as they did. And again, if they beat OKC there, they might go on to win the championship. I'll give Indiana their respect, where I'll say might. But yeah, they had a realistic shot at it too. It's funny that you say, winning is the biggest difficulty for you on where to rank him. Because for me, I don't even know if that's the biggest one for me. That's part of it. But for me, I think it's the fact that he's not really an elite defensive, center, or in the sense that he's not an elite traditional defensive center. And what I mean by that is a lot of people make a good point that, Jokic isn't necessarily like a high flyer. He doesn't, alter a lot of shots and that sort of thing. But if you try to back him down in the post, he's strong and he knows how to hold his ground. He knows how to position himself. He's also one of the best big men in NBA history in terms of steals. So he's not a shot blocker, really. He's not really like a rim protector. But would you say he's not a good defensive player? No, he's a good defensive player, and that shows up on the advanced stats as well. But again, he's not Akeem Olajuwon. He's not Bill Russell. He's not Wilt. And when you start getting into those players who are so much more dominant on one side compared to the other, like a Magic Johnson, like a Steph Curry, like a Bill Russell on the other way, where he's elite defensively, but, just all right offensively, that's where it gets really difficult for me to be like, Jokic and Hakeem, I have Jokic offensively over Hakeem for sure. But how do you make up for 2 defensive player of the years, an entire career's worth, all defense teams and everything, to 0? So that's where it gets really tough for me. And so do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's actually really interesting that you bring up Bill Russell, because I mean, me, I've been singing Bill Russell's praises since, the dawn of time. But it's just one of those things, especially with he's not a bad defensive player, just like, in my opinion, when you really look into it, Bill Russell was not a bad offensive player, right? You just really have to look into it and the nuances of the game, especially at the time. But with Jokic specifically, it's kind of a thing where we get so used to him. This was the same way it was with Bill Russell back in the 60s. People got so used to him that, and to some extent, they undersold his defensive impact, because it just became so like, it's such a casual thing for Bill Russell to just do such gaudy things on defense that it's just, out of conception. That's what Jokic is doing on offense now. It's to the point where I don't want to say defense doesn't matter, but like, it's as close to defense doesn't matter as it could be for any player. I mean, the things Jokic is doing on offense is ridiculous. I mean, he's clearly in the conversation for the greatest offensive player to have ever lived. If you want to put him there or don't want to put him there, that's all up to you. But he's clearly in the conversation. And just like I said before, the scoring and the playmaking and just the efficiency. I mean, you were bringing up Wilt, like the little time that he had the efficiency. I know in his 1967 season, I think he was scoring something around, I think it was like 24 points a game. And that was the season. I think he had like 7 or 8 assists a game, but he was like, I think it was like 68% shooting or something like that. And it was just ridiculous, but that's kind of what Jokic is doing. I think he's scoring or he's shooting closer to like 62% at the moment. I know at one point I was looking and he was like, it was like, he's averaging a triple double on like 68% shooting. I'm like, this is just ridiculous. Jokic is like God. I'm like, what is this? And granted, I mean, he's still so good, but what he's doing on offense, it's just not only unprecedented, but it's never been done before, right? What Jokic is doing. And I don't know, like, who knows if it'll ever be done again. I mean, it's so out of the mind that we need to start having conversations about, like, maybe we're only having conversations about Jokic's defense because his offense is so good that we're trying to find things to nitpick. It's kind of like Russell with like his 11 championships. It's so out of mind that we have to find something. Oh, well,
Sure.
he faced plumbers, he was just straight going up against like Walmart employees, and like there's
Right.
just zero credibility to any of his like success. But we have to do that, especially when we start comparing Russell to the Jordans and the LeBrons and the
Yeah.
Kareems of the world. And if you want to get into Johnny Arnett canon, the Birds and the Magics of the world.
Sure.
Um,
Exactly.
but that's kind of the same thing. And what I wanted to move into when it comes to Jokic is just like, what does he have to do? Because what more can he do to move himself into those arguments? Because especially with OKC's coming most likely dynasty, who knows if Jokic is winning another ring? Like, does he have to win another ring? Does he have to win an MVP or two? Like, what does he have to do to separate himself in those conversations?
In order for us to be comfortable with that conversation, he has to win a championship. Because that was something I was going to bring up. Is it feels like whenever we get to June and a guy's making his run at the championship, and then obviously the months after he wins the championship, that's where it feels like, okay, we can take that next step of being like, where's this guy at? With Steph Curry, that fourth one was huge because he had won it before, during, and after Kevin Durant. And now all of a sudden, the conversation of him for GOAT point guard, younger people especially, they want to have that conversation. Like, they're ready to put him there where we weren't really ready to put him there before. And so that happens with, almost every star who goes on to win a championship. When Jason Tatum won one, when Giannis won one, that sort of thing. It's like, well, let's take it a step forward in this conversation. So when you're losing in the second round or the Western Conference Finals or that sort of thing, there isn't that natural segue into that conversation. But at the same time, there is a valid conversation of, is Jokic the greatest offensive player, as far as offense as a whole, that we've ever seen? Efficiency, passing, scoring, like shooting from all, parts of the basketball court. Yeah, that why not? Like, based on what he's doing, it's the Wilt Chamberlain of his era in that sort of way. But again, even more so than Wilt Chamberlain, he's a great free throw shooter. Like, Wilt was like 25% worse than him, and so I think that's tough. And by the end of his career, maybe then we'll be more ready, to start having those conversations. But you're right. I mean, you don't really see it happen on like ESPN, mainstream news outlets, that sort of thing. But I don't know. Like, if I was to say, is he a better offensive player? Like, just start naming names off. Would you say he's a greater offensive player than Kevin Durant?
Oh, yeah.
Kobe.
See, you get me with this one because I'm such a Kobe fan.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say LeBron.
I would say it's the LeBrons and the Jordans where it's really so close.
But that's the thing. That's so crazy. We're talking about the greatest players in the history of the league, and Jokic is still early 30s. Like, he's not that old. We should not be looking. I mean, he might do the thing where he just retires because he's ready to go spend time with his family and horses. Like, he might just do that. Like, just Calvin Johnson, type style, or Barry Sanders, of the NFL, where it's just like, I'm just going to hang it up early, or Jordan with his first stint with the Bulls, where it's just, I'm ready to move on. I can see him doing that. But if he has, a long career like many great players are having today, he's got so many elite years left ahead of him, and we're already feeling like we're ready to have this conversation. That's wild. That's truly wild.
Well, it's one of those things we talk about because I know on a bunch of people's lists when they're trying to like rank the greatest players of all time, it's already a tough thing to do. Right. But we tend to say that we prefer peaks over longevity to some extent, right? So it's like, if that's the case, why does Jokic have to do more if he's already shown us this is his peak, for one? But also, and I'm not saying that, like, I'm not trying to argue your point. I'm just saying more in general. But also, you talk about like people being ready to put Jokic through these conversations. This might be an old point, but one person who's way more than ready to put Jokic in these conversations is Steve Kerr. I don't know if you looked at it was like the post game interview or conference or whatever, like the interviewers the media was having with Steve Kerr, and he just flat out said that Jokic, screw offensive player, right? The greatest center he has ever seen in his life. And he said specifically, he name dropped, he said, I've seen Kareem, right? I watched Kareem play. He said, Jokic is doing things that I never saw Kareem do. And from somebody like Steve Kerr, I mean, I'm not going to try and start arguing Jokic and Abdul Jabbar right now. That's not the
Sure.
point of the segment. But I mean, it's Steve Kerr's as good of a voice as anybody when it comes to that conversation.
Sure. Do you think there's a certain level of responsibility though, like for Jokic to, like, he needs to win, like any great needs to win to get in that conversation, right? You're not allowed, as far as I'm concerned, you're not allowed in the MVP conversation if you don't make the playoffs. Sorry, 1976 Kareem, I would not have voted for you. That would have gone to Bob McAdoo. But like, that's just one example. You're not allowed in the GOAT conversation if you never won a championship. You got to get at least one for me. And so, is there a certain level of responsibility on Jokic to win and to win more? And again, even if he's on the Nuggets, if you look at a lot of the great players, they were frustrated when they were putting up championship type efforts and they weren't getting championship results. MJ was frustrated. Kobe was frustrated. Magic demanded a trade within his first couple years of being with with the Lakers, but he couldn't do it because he signed a 25-year contract. And so, but a lot of guys, they demand excellence of themselves and of their teammates. And do you think maybe that needs to be a part of it? Or is Jokic just going out there doing his job, and if his teammates aren't up to snuff, it is what it is? Because to a certain extent, I want him, personally, I want him to either demand more of his teammates or maybe put some pressure on management and saying, listen, whatever situation I'm going to be in, I want to be in one where I'm going to win. And, apply some pressure that way.
I'm going to be making comparisons with Jokic and Bill Russell's era here again, but not specifically with Bill Russell. Actually, at this point, more so players like Baylor, West, and Robertson, in the sense where, kind of like how you're talking about how Shea's Thunder are almost like the Celtics of the 2020s a little bit, or like the Russell Celtics of the 2020s could be something like that.
Sure.
It becomes one of those things where, just like I have to tell myself with the Baylors, Wests, and Robertsons, what does winning mean in this era for a player that isn't on the Oklahoma City Thunder? Sure. Because if you're not on the Oklahoma City Thunder, just like in the 60s, if you're not on the Boston Celtics, like I think there was some interview back in the day, I don't know when they did it, it might have been the 90s, with Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. And Wilt Chamberlain was talking about, he was like, the Celtics were so dang good that, like, you go out there and you just want to be able to say, like, well, at least I got 40, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that was Wilt's whole mindset. It's like, we're not going to beat the Celtics, but at least I got 40. Sure. But it's kind of one of those things where it seems like such a long shot to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, 2 teams took him to 7 games. Might have been more than that last year. I was pretty sure it was the Nuggets and the Pacers.
Yep.
But it seems like they're only getting better. Like, I don't know if they're going to win as many games as they did last year. Just, that's largely a schedule thing too, just how many games you win. But I think most people would tell you that right now they're a better team than they were last year.
If Jokic was to beat this team, the conversations will be really, really fun then. I'd love to see what they're going to be like then.
Dude, I almost want him to. Like, I mean, granted, I love Jokic, right? So I do want him to. I don't almost want him to. But it's one of those things where, like, the conversations, if he does beat Oklahoma City, it would have been one of those things like, I mean, we brought it up in the last segment. Frank Selvia hit that shot in 1962. Yeah. That was completely out of Elgin Baylor's hands, mind you. Like, right. Dude had nothing to do with that. All Frank Selvia had to do, all that man had to do was hit that shot, and Baylor's immortalized because, right. I mean, it's insane. I mean, in 67, when the Sixers beat the Celtics, Wilt was doing Wilt things, but they also had, the Chet Walkers and the Hal Greers. Like they had a
Yeah,
team. That was a
for sure.
super team, and you can't,
Mm-hmm.
tell me any different. They were expected to win it all that year, but the Lakers were not expected to win it all in 62. And, you look at some of those games, especially the 61 points for Elgin Baylor, and that's kind of like, I mean, it's probably something that Jokic would have to do to even come close to beating the Thunder, unfortunately.
Right.
But if not only the Nuggets were to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, but Jokic was to do something like gaudy. Like, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
thinking back to like, let's say 2021 finals, like when Giannis was doing all the crazy things he did, like his 50-point game with the 5 blocks or whatnot.
Yeah.
Like it's like a performance like that. That's a staple in NBA history. If Jokic has some sort of like, let's say just for like, you know, giggles, like he has a 50-point triple double with like 5 steals or something like that.
Sure.
Like, let's just say he does something like ridiculous, and we're like, holy cow! Like, let's say just go off the deep end. He does it in Game 7 and it beats Shea's Thunder or does something crazy. But yeah, so I'm almost
I
going
think
to ask you,
everybody
like,
would
what
be
do you?
ready to say top 10. I think at that
Oh
point, if he
yeah,
did something like that, everyone, old head, young fans might even push him up more. But I would just say, like, everybody at that point would be like, oh, he's in the top 10. I don't care how young he is at this point, relatively, like, put him in there. And so I think that'd be really cool. And I'm with you. Well, almost completely with you. Obviously, I'm a Lakers fan. So I want Luka and the Lakers to win. But if they don't win, if they got eliminated, I'm rooting for the Nuggets 100%. Because it's not just the fact that I like Jokic and I want to see that history and I want to see that conversation. I'm not a huge fan of OKC. Like, I do think it's cool that they're, like, dominating, like, organically and that sort of thing. And it is kind of cool to see it happen for, like, Oklahoma, of all places, and not your, stereotypical, like, big cities and that sort of thing in the NBA. With that being said, there are a bunch of young guys who are just doing like goofy dances on like TikTok and stuff, and then SGA just like flopping all over the place. We just had a heated debate on Jonny Talks about that, which will be live pretty soon if it isn't already on the channel, where me and Russell are just like basically yelling at each other over that. I hate the foul baiting crap. And so, yeah, Jokic, I don't know, man. That would be so cool to see him just take down a juggernaut in that way, to almost do what, Wilt Chamberlain couldn't do. And I mean, I get it. Maybe we're going overboard, glazing this OKC team where it's like, okay, we're calling them the 60 Celtics. I'm just saying it's like one of the better examples of that in recent history where it almost feels like it isn't fair. They're so good. They're so talented. They're so deep. They have their MVP who's also foul baiting while they're just slashing and scratching guys on the defensive end, which is crazy. And so they're doing all that on top of the fact that because they had one of the greatest theft trades in NBA history where they got Jalen Williams, SGA, and a bunch of picks for Paul freaking George, they're set up for many years. Sam Presti, shout out to Sam Presti. You want to talk about GOAT conversations? He's quickly starting to enter the conversation of like GOAT GM, discussions and stuff. And so, yeah, if they win, it's cool in its own way. We got a new dynasty after years of parity. But if Jokic takes him down, that's like LeBron 3-1 comeback over the 2016 Warriors type, overthrowing. Like, that would be really, really cool.